Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is your home for organic Bible study, what we like to call the Bible Bistro. Come on in, sit down. We got some good food cooked up hot and fresh for you, and this food is eternal because we're looking at Psalm 30, verses 11 and 12. Psalm 30, verses 11 and 12. This will end Psalm 30, these last two verses, and this has been a dedication song. David wrote this for the dedication of his house, probably the one that Hiram built for him. And instead of turning his attention to himself, and at such an occasion, examining his grandeur and all the great things that he'd accomplished, no, David took the moment to praise the Lord. He even begins there in verse 1, I exalt you, O Lord, for you have lifted me up. So David realizes that he's king now over the united country of Israel, not because of his own greatness or his own prowess in battle or political acumen. No. He is now king over all that because the Lord had done a thing. He had anointed him as a boy. He had brought him up into Saul's kingdom. Saul had persecuted him. Saul then went away, and David now has come in because the Lord had given him favor with Judah and then with all of Israel, and now all the kingdom has placed him as king and given him favor, and he's thanking the Lord for that. He says his saints will sing to the Lord and give thanks to the remembrance of his holiness. David said, in my ease I will not be shaken forever. And then he goes on to tell us about calling on the Lord. There in verse 8, a beautiful, beautiful verse. To you, O Lord, I call, and of my Lord I seek favor. Verse 11 now, verse 11 and 12. You have turned me from wailing to dancing. You have opened my sackcloth and girded me with joy, in order that glory may praise you and not be silent. O Lord my God, forever I will praise you. So you see, the way that David is praising the Lord is all these reversals that we have. We have it there in verse 2. He called and the Lord healed. We have it there in verse 3. The Lord lifted him up out of hell rather than letting him go down into the pit. We have it there in verse 8. He called to the Lord and sought favor. Instead of going down into the pit, the Lord did a saving work, and David says, be gracious to me and help me. And then he says in 11, you have turned me from wailing to dancing. Well, we understand the difference, don't we? Because perhaps at a funeral, which we could have attended there in verse 3, but no, the Lord did a work in David. He brought him up from the grave and from the pit. He did not allow his blood to go down there. He saved him from that fate, and because of that, he turns wailing into dancing. So now we have, instead of a dirge, we have a party. And I wonder if perhaps this is not a signal at this dedication for there to be some dancing. Because David is praising God for all that he has done for him, so let there be some dancing. You've opened my sackcloth and girded me with joy. Now we know the sackcloth represents mourning in a state of despair. We see that Job wears the sackcloth when he goes on to the pile, the ashes. It's always been that. It's been a symbol of great despair, deep mourning. And instead of that, we have joy as the clothing. So the Lord opens the sackcloth. That is, he takes it off of him, like if you had on a jacket and somebody walked up and opened the jacket and pulled it down your shoulders. That's the idea here. The Lord is opening that sackcloth, taking it off of the wearer, and instead robing him, girding him with joy as the clothing now for the dance party. In verse 12, in order that glory may praise you and not be silent, he ends by saying, I will praise you. I hope you'll praise the Lord this weekend and seek his face. Join me again next week. We'll look at Psalm 31 on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.